Yeah, I think I'm at now part 5 of my little artist guide to Sandbox. Um, and the whole point and purpose of this tutorial series is to get you up and running using Sandbox and how you can use your own custom assets and load your own stuff. We're going to go into and package things up and share with others. So we're going to go into loading models now. So I'm going over here to click me to start, pressing F1, going to editing, and this will take me a minute or two to remember. I haven't loaded a model in a while, so excuse me. Pressing E to be in edit mode. Excuse me. Alright, to load a model, press MMODEL. That's M model, probably stands for map model, and then space, and then your directory. In my case, it'll be my username, and then its own. Each model has its own section, although that would be probably packages later. I'd probably put them in their own package sections, because I don't want to have, I have 100 models, I don't want to have 100 folders. I'd rather package them up into corresponding, stuff. So that would probably be your best bet. Do it by packages, not by single. But this is what I have, so I'm typing that in, and now I'm pressing F3, and I'm going over here to entities very slowly. And it is going to take a little bit of time and load up, I hope. Okay, and map models is already there. If it's not, you see these are little arrows, just click on a little circle there and it should load up the little map models. It'll take me a second to get my cursor where I need it to be because I'm really lagging right now. All models will load at the very bottom of this group of stuff, as far as I understand it. You can create an unfolded map and do stuff with it. You can do normal maps and a whole bunch of fancy stuff with shaders, so it's pretty cool. But I don't know all the ins and outs yet. Those are all things that I will demonstrate later. This will be an ongoing series depending on how long it takes. I'm pressing escape to get out of here. Now my cube is unfortunately rotated in a way that I do not like, so I'm keeping my cursor over it and I'm pressing, what was it, F3? Yeah. And you see here we've got this direction. So I typed in 0 and that rotated it to where it was now not messed up. Units seem to correspond to 64 units in del for player height. This is a 64 by 64 by 64 cube in del. You can drag your model around based on where you're highlighted. As I'm here on this side, it's going to do it around that axis. Or axes. I do it on the top, it'll do it there. And you can have basic collision. So I can have collision with this mesh. If I press E and go up to it, I will collide. But if you try to do something complicated like stairs, you won't be able to do it. And this is kind of what drove me to do a series here, because I wanted to just kind of give you an overview of what Sandbox is good for and what it's not good for, and what you're going to have to be aware of. What else was I going to say? Oh, rotate. Rotate works with geometry as well. Press and hold R and then use the scroll wheel. And that's another way to rotate. And it should rotate in, well, it looks like models are rotating a little more freely than geometry. Geometry in general rotates in 45-degree segments. And it seems to rotate, I think, around wherever it is that you have clicked, and I'm not sure entirely how that works. So if I were to click down here, I'll say I was going to click over here and then highlight this and press R. Yeah, I don't understand that right now, but that's how you rotate that. So, yes, we can load models into Sandbox, fully textured and stuff, but here's what you need to be aware of. And we're just going to go real quickly into talking, and then I'll try to get out of here and get ready for the next video part. But since you cannot have anything more than basic collision on your meshes, you either have to design all your meshes to be basic geometry, you know, square based, or you can have complex stuff, but it has to be square based, and you'd have to do it in pieces. Each piece would have to have its own collision. You'd have to import it into here, and you'd have to put it all together to create anything complex. So my advice for using models in Sandbox, and this should probably apply, I don't know for sure about Red Eclipse or Cube 2, if they have different rules for collision or not. I don't know how that works. I'm assuming that Sandbox is a reflection of all Cube 2 based games. It's just a thing that's not in the editor, not in the engine yet. But for right now, if you're doing anything for a Cube 2 engine, my guess is the best thing to use static meshes for is decoration. So if you were to have a sci-fi corridor, and maybe I'll demonstrate this later, excuse me a second. If you were to have a sci-fi corridor, you could make a rough out basic corridor with the geometry here in Sandbox, and then you could add pipes and all that kind of stuff to the walls, all the curvy, you know, things you might want, lights and all that kind of stuff to the walls through static meshes. But you'd have to import them in most cases with no collision, so that means that the player would be able to walk through them. But if you're just using the static meshes for decoration, then that's okay. And in some cases you can actually get a really small cube, so pressing and holding G and making it smaller, and now you could provide collision in some areas, you know, where the mesh would be over the geometry of the map. I think that might work. I haven't tested it yet. But if you're doing this in Red Eclipse, you don't want to do too much of that, because if you have stuff sticking out of the walls, my understanding of the game is that it's supposed to be for fast movement, so having stuff sticking out of the walls would get people caught. And it's bad level design in general to get people caught. So, you know, caught up on the geometry and stuff. So you want to be careful about where you do that. You can slant and do slants and stuff that people could probably get around a little easier, and that would probably be one way to get around it. But I mean, to do it in general, I would just, you know, stuff that doesn't matter if the player walks through it. They're not really going to be able to tell because it's just fine detail. That's what you'd use static meshes for. No collision, and then you wouldn't have any problems. But if you're trying to build like an arch in a static mesh and put it in here, you know, it's just not going to work. It's not going to let you go through it. You can't do spiral stairs, which I found out myself. So I would recommend using it just for decorations. I'm going to press the G key and hold it, and I want to see what the equivalent cube is. to my cube. Okay, so we're on grid size 4. So you can see that this is going to be roughly player height. So 64 units is roughly player height in Del Ed, and I haven't tried Wings 3D yet. That'll come later. That's probably what I'll be using. Press 9 to go in and out of that mode, E to go back into editing mode, and we can see that these two are the same height. So 64 units in Del Ed comes up to a 4 size selection box in Platinum Arts Sandbox. So that covers loading a mesh, importing a mesh, and usage of it. Alright, so that's it for this tutorial.